right, so one of my favorite gaming franchises ever is the Batman Arkham series. The first one I ever played was Arkham Asylum, and that was when like you could rent games from like Video Classics and Blockbuster and all that. So my mom let me rent it, and I only got to play it for a little bit. But Arkham Asylum, it was like kind of dark, and I liked it a lot. For Christmas, I got Arkham City, and I was like, oh, this looks crazy, and that was the first one I beat. All that aside, this is the last game in the franchise if you don't count Arkham Shadow and all this and that. But this is what Arkham Knight could have been. If you're a fan of Batman or those types of games, and you haven't played those games, you should definitely go play those games because they're arguably some of the best games ever. And the newer Spider-Man games and all that, like they kind of are based off around this game. But we're going to watch this and we're going to see what it could have been.
Major thought experiment in the Batman Arkham community is trying to figure out what Paul Dini's Batman Arkham Knight would have been. For anyone who's unaware, Paul Dini was the lead writer on Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, but was not asked to return to Arkham Knight. Paul Dini has always been very respectful of Rocksteady's decision to write Arkham Knight in-house. He's stated that he didn't even really know what his third game would have been, and that eventually he just heard from Rocksteady that they decided to go a different direction for the third game and would not be inviting him back, and that he's fine.
The third game is so much more different than the first two. Like, I feel like Arkham City is just... Maybe it's because Arkham City is the first one I really beat, but Arkham City was like... The whole game was just so good. And Arkham Knight, it felt like it was missing something, but they also like added the Batmobile, and it had like a lot more elements, and you were like on the ground more. So I don't know, it just felt different
with that. But if you go back and listen to his interviews when Arkham City was coming out, you can hear the care and passion that he was putting into the writing of this series. And he's even directly asked in one of the interviews about doing a third game, and he gets excited and talks about the potential for it.
Does the story for Arkham City leave room for a third installment?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Simple, huh?
Yeah, well, no one's talked to me about a third installment. I think everybody wants to do a third installment, but I think everybody's just sort of waiting to see what happens and maybe how this shakes down, and then we'll all see maybe later.
When playing Arkham City, it's also...
Arkham Origins also, because I know somebody's going to comment and say I forgot Arkham Origins. Arkham Origins also, I'm not tripping.
Clear that Paul Dini was planting the seeds for characters like Hush and Catwoman and Scarecrow to return as major players in a third and final entry. This is pure speculation on my part, but I can only imagine that Sefton Hill and his team was simply not interested in telling the story that Paul Dini had set up. They wanted to tell a story with Scarecrow and Joker, not Hush and Azrael. They took the third game in a whole new direction, and in some cases almost treated it like a soft reboot, and I'd say that there were mixed results here. There's certain aspects of Arkham Knight's story that I love, and certain aspects that feel like severely missed opportunities.
Yes.
Today my goal is not to manufacture drama or put words in people's mouths or try to predict if Paul Dini and Sefton Hill secretly have grudges against each other. My goal is just to go through the setup that Paul Dini had established in Arkham City and try to imagine what his version of Arkham Knight might have been. As it exists right now, Arkham Knight, I think, is a great thematic conclusion to the Rocksteady trilogy. I love how it pays off the fears established in Arkham Asylum. One of the coolest details in the whole series to me is the fact that in Batman's third and arguably worst Scarecrow nightmare in Arkham Asylum, he's being taken into the asylum on a gurney, and at the end of Arkham Knight, his final ultimate mission is that he's being taken into the asylum on a gurney. I like how Arkham Knight reimagined Mark Hamill's role as the Joker and gave a really interesting...
I was literally going to say that's exactly what happens to Joker in the games. So it was it was a crazy scenario. All the Scarecrow scenarios in these games, they're like the best depictions of like Scarecrow as a character and just like what he can do. Like he doesn't have powers, but his like fear toxin, like it's just the visuals are wild.
Send off and incorporated him in a really unique way. In an emotional and thematic sense, I think Batman Arkham Knight is a very fitting conclusion to Rocksteady's trilogy, but from a logic, plot-based perspective, it is a total mess. The pacing is all over the place, and it has a really hard time balancing all of the characters it wants to include. It sidelines major characters like Hush, Catwoman, and Azrael, who were established heavily in Arkham City, but then tries to shoehorn in characters like Jason Todd and give them a rushed story arc.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when he comes in as the Red Hood, it's just so random. You're just like, oh shit, you're like the last guy? And it's like you haven't heard anything about him. I mean, you see like a scene of him, But it's like, he's just not, him as a character in the Batman universe is super big and super dope. But like in the game, it just felt weird.
Personal
Very
biggest
rushed,
problem
like you
with
said.
Batman Arkham Knight is that the blood subplot with Batman physically literally turning into Joker makes no sense, and I thought was kind of unnecessary. You could just have that be his fear. You could have Scarecrow's toxin influencing him and he feels like he's transforming into Joker. You don't need to have it be this literal physical manifestation. It also doesn't make sense when you compare it to the previous games. In Arkham Asylum, Joker overdoses on Titan. In Arkham City, he has this Titan disease that he passes along to Batman, which Batman is looking for a cure for. Along the way, we learn that Joker has sent this infected blood to hospitals all over the city, and that this blood is being used in blood transfusions to sick patients, and so this infection is spreading. We learn that there's already 30 confirmed cases, and there are likely going to be hundreds more by morning. Batman succeeds in finding a cure, but in Arkham Knight, this whole plot is retconned. Batman is now transforming into Joker, as are 4 other infected individuals. Why are these people not dying and instead actually transforming into Joker? And why is Batman infected when he took a cure in Arkham City? This is one of those examples of the game feeling like a soft reboot, because on its own merits, I think the plot of Arkham Knight is fine, but when you hold it up as a sequel to Arkham Asylum and City, it falls apart very fast. There are also—
Yeah, it makes you feel like they kind of were like, we gotta like rush this and like just put this game out. And it's like they were doing something really good, and then it's like they just didn't know how to finish it. And I don't know how you do that whenever the first 2 games were just so untouchable. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Also weird decisions to make the whole Arkhamverse feel less storied. When Firefly shows up, it's cool to see him again, but they establish very firmly that the only other encounter Batman has had with him is in Arkham Origins. I much prefer the approach of Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, where when he goes up against a character like Mr. Freeze or Poison Ivy, it feels like he's faced them countless times and has a ton of stories with them.
Yes.
So while Batman Arkham Knight, to me, is a great standalone Batman story and a fitting thematic conclusion to the trilogy, it definitely ignores and sidelines a lot of the things that Paul Dini was setting up. In Arkham City, Hush was being established as a major new threat who had grafted his victims' faces onto his own so that he could look identical to Bruce Wayne. Azrael was watching Batman from the rooftops and at the end revealed a prophecy that was very cryptic and teased an interesting potential future. Catwoman was utilized heavily in the story, being the secondary playable character, and it seems that she was being set up as the major supporting character of the series. Scarecrow's return seemed inevitable, with plentiful teases to him still being alive. Now, what if I told you that around the same time that Paul Dini was writing stories for Rocksteady, he was also working on a comic called Batman Heart of Hush, which involved Hush as the main villain, Catwoman as a supporting character, and Scarecrow as a supporting villain. This comic was published in the same year that Batman Arkham Asylum released and featured a story about Hush literally stealing Catwoman's heart. I mean, like surgically removing it from her chest.
What the fuck?
He keeps her hooked up to a machine that allows her to stay alive while he plays a twisted game with Batman. Batman has to find a way to defeat Hush and get Catwoman's heart back before she dies. Along the way, he has encounters with Scarecrow, and it's also established that Hush is not the only villain with a personal vendetta against Batman who wants to kill him. It's also worth noting that the comic received rave reviews, and many people still think that it's the best utilization of Hush in any story ever. So to have the third Arkham game be a loose adaptation of Heart of Hush seems very likely. All the ingredients were there: a returning supporting Scarecrow, Hush as a main villain who has made his face look exactly like Bruce Wayne's, Catwoman being established as the primary supporting character of the series. Paul Dini often said in interviews that writing for games was very different than writing for TV or film or comics because you had to service gameplay. It wasn't just a pure narrative, you also needed to have encounters with enemies. For this reason, I'm sure that much of this story would have been reimagined. I could see Catwoman's predicament being a little bit different. Maybe it would have been like her side mission with Riddler in Arkham Knight, where she has a bomb strapped around her neck so that she can still be accessible in gameplay. I honestly think that Paul Dini's Arkham Knight would have been a mix between Heart of Hush and Arkham Knight as it exists now. I do feel that there would have been a lot of similar ground covered. Paul Dini probably would have wanted to dive into how Joker's death had impacted Batman, whether this would have resulted in a literal appearance from Mark Hamill's Joker or just a shadow of Joker being cast over the city. It's unclear, but I bet that is subject matter he would have wanted to tackle. The power vacuum left by Joker probably would have been explored. I wonder if Paul Dini would have had all the villains working together, or if he would have had them each vying for top spot in Gotham's underworld now that Joker no longer inhabited it.
That would have made so much more sense since the Joker's out of the picture, like, and he's like the big bad basically. It would have just made more sense for all the villains to just come together and start like not a revolution, but and not like a Sinister Six, but like I don't know, like, hey, we gotta kill the Batman, and like we gotta really kill the Batman. Like, I don't know, it just would have been completely different if they just tackled everything completely different.
Probably would have been kind of similar. A character being brainwashed by the Order of Saint Dumas that Batman is trying to break through to. The big alteration, if I had to guess, to Azrael is that he probably would have been included in the main story. Characters like Man-Bat and Deacon Blackfire, if Paul Dini had chosen to include them, probably would have received more setup and a larger story arc.
Yeah, because when you're playing the game, Man-Bat, he just randomly jump scares you, and he only does it like one more time in the game, and I think that's like on Halloween or something like that. But like, you see him once and you're like, holy fuck, and then he's just nowhere to be found. And if you don't know who Man-Bat is like, he's a man-bat. Like, he's the opposite of, like, not the opposite of Batman, but Batman is Batman. He's a guy who dresses up as a bat, essentially, and he fights crime. Man-Bat is a human bat guy, mutant dude. But yeah, they just didn't, like, it was just a missed opportunity, because that boss fight would have been so cool, and he flies and everything. Like, that just missed opportunity.
My guess also is that some of these new characters like Simon Stagg and Deacon Blackfire probably would have been replaced with characters that Paul Dini had set up. For example, I'd imagine he maybe would have picked Victor Zsasz over Deacon Blackfire. He might have gone with someone like Black Mask or Oswald Cobblepot or even Carmine Falcone over Simon Stagg. The big question mark to me is the Arkham Knight. Would Paul Dini have tried to tell the Under the Red Hood story in Arkham Knight? Personally, I think maybe he would have. I don't think he would have tried to treat it like a crazy plot twist, though. I think Paul Dini would understand that that's a pretty simple story that most Batman fans are aware of. It probably would have been more fleshed out and not trying to outsmart the audience. He probably would have gone with the more traditional version of the story where Joker actually does kill Jason Todd and Jason has to be revived by the Lazarus Pit. In Arkham Knight as it exists right now, Joker just kind of pretends that he kills Jason, but doesn't. It doesn't really make sense, but in the traditional story, he's revived by Ra's al Ghul. I've done a whole video discussing why I think Ra's al Ghul should have been more involved in Jason Todd's story in Arkham Knight, and my guess is that Paul Dini would have had similar instincts. The Arkham Knight as a character would make a lot more sense if it was a character revived by Ra's al Ghul and tasked with going and killing the criminal elements in Gotham one by one.
Yes.
Funnily enough, I actually think Paul Dini might have utilized Red Hood as a side mission rather than a main antagonist. With Hush and Scarecrow likely taking the top spot, I don't know that he would have chosen to pursue Jason Todd as the main threat. Thematically,
yeah, because like I said, it was just so random. It just didn't feel earned. Like, it would, like, at least, like, if it was Scarecrow or somebody, like, it would have just felt you've already, like, dealt with them, but, like, it didn't feel like complete, if that makes sense. Red Hood just comes out of nowhere, and you're just like, oh, like, this is cool fan service, but, like I said, it just did not feel complete. Like, even after you beat him, you're like, okay, well, what's next? And then there's nothing next.
Arkham Knight probably would have been similar. I doubt that Paul Dini would have tried to tell a story about Batman physically becoming Joker, but it probably would have been a story about Batman dealing with the death of Joker and Talia. Talia's death probably would have played a larger role in Batman's grief. He might have been inclined to bring back a character like Clayface, and overall, it would have felt like a more direct sequel to Arkham City. For the character arc for Batman, it probably would have been about overcoming fear, similar to how it is in the final game. He would have been coming to peace with the death of his parents and some of those other fears that were established in Arkham.
Okay, before we keep listening, did you just see what happened on screen? Why do villains do that? Like, stop talking and just end it. Like, that makes no sense. You have the Batman right there. Why are you not just finishing this? It makes no sense to me.
Have been coming to peace with the death of his parents and some of those other fears that were established in Arkham Asylum. It really bums me out that Paul Dini was not invited back to conclude his story in the Arkham series and wasn't even seemingly used as a consultant. In my opinion, Paul Dini is one of the best Batman writers out there, and he truly left his mark on the Arkham series, and I can only imagine how grand his finale would have been. But now I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments below what you would have liked to have seen from Arkham Knight. Do you think you would have preferred Paul Dini's version over Sefton Hill's version?
100%. If like, even the idea of like Batman dealing with the Joker's death, it's already interesting because like there's always that saying whenever like the Joker always says like, we need each other, or I need you, or without you, like, who am I? Like, that, just that type of stuff. So it's like, when the Joker's gone, how does Batman feel? Like, he doesn't have like his arch nemesis and all of that. But I don't know, it was a good video. It really makes me want to replay the Arkham games. One of the best gaming franchises ever. Just a really good game series.